Susan Vance was a phenomenon, a force of nature dressed in cashmere and disdain. At 32, she sat on the board of a multinational investment firm, a perch she hadn't earned through patience or kindness, but through sheer, unyielding ruthlessness. Her world was a flawlessly constructed temple of wealth and order, and she saw everyone else as either a stepping stone or an obstacle. This Monday morning, she exploded from her Upper East Side penthouse, already 5 minutes behind her impossible schedule, radiating an entitled fury that made the polished doorman flinch. Her bespoke navy suit, tailored in London, felt like a second skin, a seamless extension of her dominance. Her diamond-studded watch, a recent acquisition, was merely a tool to mark the rapid, valuable progress of her life. She didn't acknowledge the doorman or even glance at the cab driver. She saw only a generic service module. She tossed her expensive alligator briefcase onto the worn back seat, not caring where it landed. Midtown Towers, 48th Street. I have a 9 a.m. pitch that will define the quarter, and if you make me late, I will personally ensure you never drive a livery vehicle in this city again. Go, now. Her tone was a weapon, sharp enough to cut glass, honed over years of crushing competitors and subordinates. She didn't wait for a reply, instantly immersing herself in her phone. Her current target for executive annihilation was Mark, her dedicated but timid assistant. Mark had used the company's mandated brand font instead of the specialized custom typeface Susan preferred for her presentations. The failure to appreciate the aesthetics of power is a moral failure, she judged, her thumb flying across the screen. She sent a barrage of increasingly aggressive red text corrections, culminating in a vicious final memo. This presentation is garbage. Your work is a reflection of your character, which I now perceive as fundamentally weak. Figure out how to be excellent or prepare your exit strategy by noon. Her arrogance wasn't just a coping mechanism, it was the celebrated cornerstone of her identity, the belief that her success licensed her to treat humanity as a collection of disposable assets. The taxi was a slightly older, black Ford sedan. Its interior was thick, suffocating, a battleground where the faint, acrid smell of old cigarette smoke was losing badly to a heavy, sickly sweet cologne. The driver, a large man named Leo, was almost completely hidden beneath the shadow of his cap. Susan, momentarily finished with Mark's execution, finally looked up. She caught her own reflection in the rearview mirror, but her gaze was instantly snagged by Leo's eyes, flat, unsettling discs of light-absorbing grey that held no warmth or recognition. A small, alien tremor of dread ran down her spine, a sensation her logical mind instantly labeled as caffeine crash. She returned to her phone, reviewing dense market data. But 10 minutes later, the undeniable reality of her location slammed into her. The soaring corporate towers were gone, replaced by the grim concrete and rusting chain-link fences of the city's forgotten industrial heartland. Her internal corporate alarm system, the instinct that saved her from bad deals, screamed. She threw her phone down. "Driver," she demanded, her voice losing its habitual sharpness and dissolving into something thin and terrified. "This is not the route. We are 3 miles off course. We are deep in the industrial exclusion zone. Stop the car immediately and tell me where you are going." Leo's response was a chilling, deliberate, protracted silence. The car did not slow. If anything, it gathered speed. His hands, thick and scarred, tightened on the steering wheel until the skin was bone-white. The cloying cologne scent was now a tangible chokehold. "Just a small detour, Miss Vance. Avoiding the congestion." The sound of her surname, spoken in that low, unfamiliar growl, was the final, devastating piece of evidence, slamming into her consciousness like an icy wave. Miss Vance. She hadn't introduced herself. She hadn't said a single word about her destination beyond the building name. How could he possibly know her name? Her world, a fortress of carefully curated certainty, began to dissolve into a terrifying, unfamiliar liquid, a truth her meticulous, control-freak mind instinctively rejected but could not deny. This was personal, this was deliberate, shot through her veins, freezing her blood. She was not lost. She was being targeted. The headlines she'd scorned as being about other people, the vulnerable, the careless, now flashed across her mind with brutal personal clarity. Missing women, Black market exploitation, human trafficking. This wasn't a simple mugging. This was ruin. The air in the cab, already thick with stale smoke and aggressive cologne, suddenly felt entirely absent. Susan's throat constricted. Incapable of drawing a full breath, her heart hammering a frantic, erratic rhythm against her ribs. Her executive composure, the armor that had never once cracked in a billion-dollar negotiation, vaporized, revealing the raw fear beneath. She launched herself sideways, her expensive leather glove scrabbling frantically for the door handle. She pulled, yanked, and hammered the metal with the desperate, panicked strength of an animal caught in a snare. Locked, immovable. The handles mocked her attempts. She stabbed repeatedly and uselessly at the power window buttons, her perfect manicure irrelevant against the cold, hard plastic. Disabled. The taxi was not a livery vehicle, it was a soundproof, moving prison designed for one purpose. She spun back, her eyes wide and glistening with pure, unadulterated fear, and met Leo's gaze in the rearview mirror. His grey eyes were no longer just unsettling, they were openly, terrifyingly triumphant, filled with a sick satisfaction that settled the horrific truth deep in her bones. She was not a colleague, not a competitor, not an asset, she was prey. He finally broke the silence with a dry, guttural chuckle that promised complete devastation, a sound that scraped against her nerves like gravel. No need for the hysterics, darling. You're worth a lot of money to the right people. We're almost at our final destination. And don't waste your breath on screaming. This old cab's got thick glass and nobody ever looks down these streets. Just relax. It's much easier for everyone if you just relax. His words were a physical violation. Her brilliant analytical mind, usually capable of complex financial modeling in seconds, was reduced to a primal instinct: escape. She frantically searched the back seat, her hands sweeping across the worn upholstery, looking for anything, a stray tool, a forgotten pen, anything she could use as a weapon. Nothing. The horrifying lexicon of human trafficking, forced sexual exploitation, debt bondage for manual labor, even a brutal high-stakes ransom, reverberated in her brain. Her life, once a monument to total personal control, was now utterly and completely surrendered to this monstrous man's twisted will. The thin, choked scream that finally escaped her throat was the sound of Susan Vance's arrogance collapsing into dust, leaving behind a core of sheer terror. Just as Leo violently wrenched the wheel, turning off the desolate access road into a pitch-black, refuse-strewn alleyway, a path that offered no witnesses and no escape, the world was rent by a cataclysm. It wasn't a tactical braking or a controlled slide. It was a chaotic, soul-sickening collision, a deafening crunch of bending, tearing metal, followed by the heavy, sickening thud of a body striking steel. The car was flung violently sideways, skidding uncontrollably, snapping Susan forward against the absolute limit of her seatbelt. The force of the impact was so severe it winded her, leaving her gasping. Before the echo of the destruction could fade, the external world erupted into a storm of unadulterated noise, the continuous, panicked blare of a truck horn, terrified screams of witnesses, and the furious shouts of nearby workers. Leo had hit someone. A man had seemingly materialized from the dense pre-dawn shadows, an inexplicable, out-of-place figure who had absorbed the entire force of the vehicle. The predator was instantly reduced to a frantic, exposed criminal. "No! Where did he come from? Did anyone see that?" Leo shrieked, his large hands shaking uncontrollably as he fumbled to switch off the ignition. Within seconds, the car was besieged. Construction workers in fluorescent vests, delivery drivers, and several startled employees from a nearby processing plant converged, shouting accusations, demanding accountability, and calling for emergency services. The immediate public nature of the accident had utterly annihilated the covert, silent menace of the trap. Leo had lost control and focus. He had to face the very visible crisis outside. "Stay right there, Miss Vance. I'm warning you, don't move," he snarled, yanking the door handle and scrambling out into the blinding light of the emergency. Susan didn't hesitate. Her hands, despite their violent tremors, found the central lock button. Click. She threw the passenger door open, the sound lost beneath the deafening din of the crowd's outcry. She didn't look at the victim or the driver. With a desperate, laser focus, the ingrained executive discipline for crisis management asserting itself over the raw trauma, she slipped away from the huddle. She walked rapidly but calmly, a perfectly dressed shadow blending into the chaos until she reached the main street. Her first coherent words to the next cab driver she flagged down were not the address of her high-stakes pitch, but a frantic whisper. "Take me to the nearest police precinct, now, and don't stop." The next 12 hours were an agonizing, brutalizing blur under the harsh, sterile fluorescent lights of the precinct. Susan provided her statement, her expensive suit smelling faintly of fear and dust. The police confirmed her most terrifying fears. Leo, the driver, was not just a rogue cabbie. He was a known piece of a massive, interlocking network involved in human trafficking, dealing in vulnerability and exploitation for various stomach-turning purposes. They showed her mugshots of other suspects, detailing how these networks preyed on women from all walks of life. Not just the vulnerable, but those like her caught off guard during a simple morning commute. The detective, a tired-eyed woman, gave her a stark debriefing. "The risk is everywhere, Ms. Vance. We've seen women abducted for forced sexual exploitation, others forced into debt bondage for manual labor, even those taken for quick ransoms based on their perceived wealth. The purpose changes, but the method is always the same: isolation and speed. They target times and places where people are complacent, like a morning commute." Susan, the woman who never took advice, found herself clinging to every word, absorbing the horrifying cautionary tale of what she had narrowly escaped. The detective emphasized crucial safety steps. Always confirm your ride app details, driver name, license plate, and photo before entering a vehicle, and never accept an unsolicited ride. Always share your live location with a trusted contact. Pay attention to your route, and if you feel uneasy, your instinct is correct: cause a scene, scream, break something, draw attention. Silence is their most effective weapon. But the detail that haunted her, more than Leo's chilling eyes or the detective's grim warnings, was the still, gentle face of the man lying on the cold pavement. He was the impossible variable, the ordinary man who had appeared at the precise moment of her ultimate need. He was her inadvertent savior, her shield against a nightmare. As soon as her statement was formally completed and processed, her overwhelming relief curdled into a consuming, desperate gratitude. She demanded the name of the hospital where the victim had been transported. The following morning, Susan Vance, usually a vision of controlled, tailored perfection, was a ghost. Her bespoke suit was wrinkled, her eyes hollow from a sleepless night battling trauma. She stood at the hospital reception desk, clutching an absurdly large, fragrant bouquet of white lilies. Her voice, stripped entirely of its demanding authority, was soft, hesitant, and quiet. "I'm here to visit the John Doe admitted yesterday afternoon, the accident victim from Elm Street, the man hit by the sedan." The nurse, kind-faced and weary, checked the records, her brow furrowing deeply in professional confusion. "Ma'am, we did admit an unidentified male. He was stabilized in the trauma bay and his recovery was miraculous. His vital signs were excellent, astonishingly so considering the blunt force trauma. We prepared him for admission to a standard room, but he's gone." Susan's hands tightened around the lilies until her knuckles whitened. "Gone? Discharged? Who signed the release forms? I need to see him. I owe him everything." The nurse shook her head, pulling up every digital log. "No discharge was filed. No family came forward. We have no paper trail whatsoever. His bed was simply empty this morning. Every security camera on the ward shows nothing. No one saw him leave. He vanished. It's as if he fulfilled a momentary, inexplicable function and simply dissolved into thin air." The shock of the disappearance solidified into a burning, desperate, all-consuming quest. For the next 3 months, Susan channeled the formidable executive intensity she once reserved for high-stakes mergers into finding the man. She revisited the police station countless times, pushing detectives to run advanced searches on every missing persons database nationwide, using DNA samples and sketches recovered at the scene. She spent weekends driving across state lines, visiting every single shelter, community center, and church outreach program within a massive radius. showing the only existing image of the kind-faced unknown man. The answer was always the same. Nothing. He had no record, no identification, no history. A perfect, unnerving blank slate. Susan was finally forced to confront the impossible, a reality that utterly rejected the logical, linear, profit-driven world she had mastered. The man had appeared like a bolt of lightning, absorbed the violence meant for her, created the chaos necessary for her escape, and then vanished, leaving behind only the cold truth of her survival and a deep, agonizing, empty cavity where her arrogance used to be. The impossible nature of the event cracked the very foundation of her personality. Her shield of arrogance, which she had used to navigate the cutthroat business world, was revealed as brittle and utterly meaningless against true existential terror. She realized that her life had been saved not by her power or wealth, but by an anonymous, selfless, miraculous act of intervention. The old Susan, the icy executive who viewed people as interchangeable pawns, began a slow, deliberate and painful transformation. She stopped sending scathing emails. She had learned the true meaning of high stakes. She began genuinely listening to Mark, her assistant, treating him not as a resource, but as a person, offering patient mentorship and recognition instead of cruel dismissals. She took an immediate voluntary sabbatical, realizing that the pursuit of endless wealth was a cold, cruel illusion. The raw terror of her near abduction transformed into a passionate, unstoppable drive to help. She started volunteering 4 days a week at a women's shelter, dedicating her vast organizational skills and substantial wealth to anti-trafficking efforts. Her focus shifted entirely from what she could accumulate to what she could repair and what she could prevent. She meticulously organized safety seminars at the shelter, incorporating the very cautionary advice she had received from the detective, teaching vulnerable women how to recognize and resist the very types of dangers that had nearly claimed her. She kept a tall, ceramic vase of white lilies on her office desk, perpetually fresh, the silent symbol of the impossible man. She didn't know if he was a random vagrant, an intentional sacrifice, or an emissary from a higher, intervening realm, but she chose to believe he was her guardian angel, a messenger who used his own body to ensure she was given a second chance. And that chance, she finally understood, wasn't merely about surviving the event. It was about finally starting to live as the compassionate human person worthy of the inexplicable grace she had received. If you love this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that subscribe button. It truly means the world to us and helps us grow. And hey, while you're at it, let's aim for 50 likes on this video. Help us smash that goal.